to call on them as well and father them, because for some reason their father not around, whether it be their father themselves were involved in crime and they were killed, or their father is sitting in jail, or the father go overseas to look for a better life. All different reasons come into play, but we have to look out for each other, and that is one of the things I think we need as well. We need to stop being fearful. You know, there are times where people tell you, if they see somebody, child doing something, they don't want to tell them nothing because the parent might come after them and all, and so on. We must stop having this fear. But isn't that reality? It happens, Tim, but we should never cower. We should never bow to those things. We must take a firm stance, and as long as we know we're not going to raise our hand on the person, child, and so on, but we can call on them. Watch today, I went and picked up my daughter from the entry post-secondary school, and as I park in on the side to pick up my daughter, I just see a young guy fell to the ground, and as soon as he stood up, he turned around and he started cuffing another, punching another young man. And I had to just pack my van quickly and run outside and pull them apart and tell them what's going on, what's happening. So the guy now is saying that the young man tripped him, and the one he's accusing of tripping him say, well, that one threw something on him. So I asked him, well, what did he throw on the guy? He said a leaf. I said, well, you shouldn't throw anything on anybody because you instigated what just happened, and you have to take responsibility and apologize to the young man for throwing something on him in the first place. And I said to the other guy who tripped the other one, I said to him, look, the guy threw something on you. There could have been so many responses you could have given to that situation, but you choose to trip him. He could have hurt himself, you know, and so on and so forth. And I got them to apologize to each other. So, I mean, we as adults, we have to intervene in this kind of situation, and don't be fearful that, oh, that boy is, well, I'll bring my father behind you, I'll bring my mother behind you. We mustn't have this kind of fear, even in our community, even though from time to time these things happen, because even in the school system, children bring their parents behind the teachers, and all kind of things happen in the school. These things happen. So the parents themselves have to take responsibility. If another parent is cautioning you and telling you something about your child's deviant behavior, you have to be humble enough to accept that, because we all want good for our children. So
I'm saying to you, those are the solutions, instead of even wanting to focus on post-traumatic slave syndrome. That is what I have a difficulty with. To be when you adopt that kind of posture, we're not taking responsibility for our actions, and maybe some lawyer can decide to use that and get the client off on some kind of technicality. I don't see that kind of approach standing up in court. My client is suffering from post-traumatic slave syndrome, Your Honor. Well, how will that work?
Well, the lawyer will have to give the evidence, because I mean, at the condition we're talking about there, when you approach this and you go to the schools and you talk to the children, you don't tell them about post-traumatic slave syndrome. You've recognized, because we have to first recognize that we have a problem. We have to recognize that something is wrong fundamentally or otherwise. That the first step to solving a problem is to admit that there is a problem. So those of us who are aware of the problem, we go in there with solutions. So we go in there to teach exactly the scenario I told you what happened if the children. You go there with that kind of attitude to show the children how we could be more tolerant with each other, more patient with each other, and not be quick to anger and rage and so on and so forth. That is the approach you will take. But you as the adult, you've learned about those things, you know the condition, so you now have to tackle it with solutions, you know. So that's if in mentioning it is just mentioning that it's a condition that we are suffering from, but it doesn't mean that you're going to go in there and talk to the children about that in particular. You go there with solutions and teach them coping skills, you know, how to survive among each other, socializing with each other, and so on, making sure that they don't get violent towards each other. That's how you approach it, you know.
What do you think has prevented us from taking that approach? We're talking about a responsibility, a role for civil society in St. Lucia, because people are saying in St. Lucia, civil society is not vibrant. I think it's worse than that. Civil society is non-existent. Do you think that is at the heart of the problem?
I don't think it's non-existent. I think that civil society entities tend to go on a political level whereby it depends on who's in power. They either take mumu tablets or they talk a lot, you know, and that is one thing. Coming in as the president of ICAR, I've always vowed that I'm not going to be that sort of a person being involved in an organization like ICAR, which is a civil society organization.
Even if you get assistance directly from the Prime Minister, the government to organize your
it doesn't matter,
event?
It doesn't matter. I believe in talking truth to power, and I believe that any mature Prime Minister or government will take constructive criticism And sometimes you may do it openly, or sometimes you will send a WhatsApp or call up a minister or something and speak with them, because, for example, Honorable Richard Frederick in Central Castries, he's my rep from Central Castries, that's where I'm from, and from time to time I would call him and show him different ideas of Central Castries and tell him certain things. Like one time they were putting when they were putting the flower pots where the vendors were there opposite the old fire station area, and I felt that some of them were too big. I was saying, but where will a wheelchair pass and that kind of thing, you know? And I called him up and I mentioned that to him, and he told me, yes, Aron, you know, we actually were thinking about that, you know. And when I passed there, I saw the guys working, and I call on one of them. I say, my brother, remember there are people on wheelchairs, and those flower pots are so humongous, it might take up all the space on the sidewalk. So I mean, this our country, we have to make suggestions, we have to see things as well, and if politicians are mature enough, they're going to accept and say, well, yeah, you know, that making sense, my brother. So whether it be prime minister or any minister or so on, you should feel free to be able to do that in your country, whether you do it openly or you do it, you know, privately, you know. But we need to do those things. And even with the crime situation we have, we need organizations to come up with ideas, you know, and share it freely. You know, don't think of, you know, because that party is in power, you want them to look bad, so you'll not share no ideas with them. You'll wait till another party come in office that's more favorable to you. We should get away from those things, and regardless of who's in power, we must always speak truth to power.
But how can we change our mindset as far as this is concerned when we are so polarized one way or the other? Because there definitely is need for a vibrant civil society, and ICAR that could raise the various issues, and other interest groups, your National Youth Council, and so on. They definitely need to change their approach, but how will this be done? So that instead of focusing primarily on post-traumatic slave syndrome, we can focus on the other things that are within our immediate control to improve the lives of our young males.
I think in civil society groups, you know, again, they should find their voice. They should always have their voice. And it doesn't mean that because you criticize something that you're against a government, because sometimes you may criticize all you criticize, and when the time comes and that bell rings, you might still end up going and vote for that same government you criticize so many times. So politicians should not be thin-skinned and try to victimize people when people criticize them. I mean, they're in public office, and people will see things that they think that can be better. And civil society must play a great role. The churches, and from time to time, I've made calls to civil society themselves to speak up about issues that is happening in the country. Don't pretend like you take more tablets, because it's going to affect you. It's going to come to your doorstep. And crime is something for sure we know is when it escalates, it affects everybody. It even affects our ability to earn as a country, because if we have all this high level of crime, countries are going to warn their citizens not to visit our country, because, as you know, tourism is our lifeblood. So we have an obligation to speak out. And as ICAR, I took that vow, I took that oath. No matter who's in power, I'm going to speak out. I don't regard whether the government assists ICAR or not. I think they have a moral obligation to do so, and if they decide not to do that, well, it's on them. It's like the same situation. I look at it even when the former Prime Minister withdrew the subvention to the National Trust. I mean, that was on him to do that, and he did it. Another government come, they reinstated it. But I'm saying, whether an organization is critical of you or not, you should never try to victimize them on no level at all. And a mature government would not do something like that.
You think that was victimization because an explanation was given as to why the National Trust was not, or the subvention was stopped? Yes,
and I think even with the National Trust, even when they came out and they refuted what the former Prime Minister said. I mean, I was a member of the National Trust, and I know to some extent how they operate. And I would not venture to say that they are political. I mean, there are times that they give leeway, they allow certain things to happen, and there are other times that they would speak out on certain issues. So even at the time that all this fracas was going on, I mean, we had the former Prime Minister, Sir John, his daughter was involved with that, and the Prime Minister at the time is in the heart and the belly of the party formed by her father. So you would think that there would be some level of understanding if she criticized him or this kind of things, but it seemed as if, well, it was a bit heavy-handed. I find that if at least you're going to stop the subvention, at least do it maybe on a level whereby, okay, you inform them that this year is going to be a year that's the last time they'll receive the full subvention. The following year they might get 50%. You know, you do it, you break it down. You don't just all of a sudden cut the line like that. I find that was heavy-handed, Tim.
Let's continue on youth and youth violence. But why do you think, therefore, that and I think at some point in time you would have through some clip that you sent me, we might play it a little bit later.
Yeah.
It is being suggested that young people, particularly those on the wrong side of the law, they're arrested, they're taken to court, they provide free labor, and then you have a situation where they must seek legal representation that comes at a cost and so on. So you're generally talking about exploitation. Now at the local level, don't you think that politicians have a tendency to exploit young black men?
Well, not young black men alone, people generally.
But since we're talking about youth and violence,
yeah, okay. Yeah. I mean, even they tell you there are some jurisdictions that tell you like crime is big business. It's just like war. War is big business. So there are people who benefit from death. You know, from us killing each other, people killing each other, people benefit from that as well, because there's, like you mentioned, there's a whole system that is in place for legal representation, the courts, the funeral homes, everybody, you know, there's money to be made out of death. So, I mean, we have to recognize those things and try to ensure we behave ourselves in a way that we don't let the people profit on us in that kind of way. And all these kind of things it goes back again to show that we have not learned, we are not in a position where we have educated ourselves enough and be intelligent enough to realize the amount of people who benefit from us killing each other, you know, and this is another thing that our young men, our young people need to learn, you know, and all these things are being kept away. Earlier you mentioned about why is it that these things are not in our school system, and I was going to respond by letting you know that, remember, our education system is a neo-colonial education system that we have inherited, and it's a deliberate attempt to keep us ignorant of those great leaders who you just mentioned earlier, the Nelson Mandelas and the Martin Luther King and so on, because they don't want us to know about these men. They don't want us to be educated about these men. And our education leaders, our leaders of education, from our minister and so on, they need to recognize those things and make a deliberate attempt, because it was deliberately done unto us to keep that level of education away from us. So we have to make a deliberate attempt to reintroduce and bring these things in our school system.
But Mr. Alexander, why do you think that there's this tardiness, almost appears to be deliberate, in not reviewing our curriculum? Because there's been analyses conducted. People have admitted that there is need to review the school curriculum, even at the local level in St. Lucia. Several ministers of education have reached that conclusion. What is preventing them from taking that deliberate step to effect that change?
Tim, many times some people have always alluded to the notion that a lot of our leaders are puppets. Puppets of who? Puppets to who? You know, these are the questions we need to ask. Who's pulling the strings, you know? And these are some of the questions we need to answer. Because I think that sometimes our leaders, you know, they are puppets for real. And there are higher forces that are instructing them not to do this and not to do that, you know, in fear of maybe sanctions, in fear of reprisals or whatever the case might be. You find some leaders become very timid, and they have, because even if you look at the issue of cannabis, for example, watch how long that fight has been on for legalizing cannabis. And I mean, it has been illegal now for almost 100 years, and it's only now, you know, as if, well, somebody had to show them the way, or somebody or some bigger country had to start legalizing it at their home for us to subconsciously, like, they give us permission for us to do it as well. And you're hearing all Caribbean leaders want to jump on the cannabis industry, and all the years we've been there, and especially the Rastafari community have been advocating for that for eons, and it's never been given the light of day. And as soon as you see America start going down that road, all Caribbean countries want to follow. So we have become that sort of a people that we want to watch what others do, especially big countries that have a big stick, before we actually do certain things. So I think there's a lot of fear even within our leaders, and fear is something that is used for control purposes, and we could be threatened with sanctions, we could be threatened with different different kind of punishments if we go down a certain road. And I believe these things had a lot to play, a part to play, because even in the earlier days, in the days of men like Bob Marley singing all this conscious reggae music, emancipate yourself from mental slavery and brainwash education and all these kind of things, and Burning Spear will tell you Christopher Columbus is a damn blasted liar. In all those times there, the Black Panther movement and all these things, we had real opportunity, to make those changes. And I always consider in 1997 with a 16-1 victory, even constitution reform, or amendment, whatever it took for us to revamp our education system. Governments have gotten those mandates. Even now, this current government with that majority, in parliament, they could do a lot of things, and they could do a lot of things to benefit the country and to open the eyes of people and to bring things into our education system. Our people want those things, but I don't know there's a fear, there's a fear that, some kind of a retribution might come, or some kind of a punishment might come from the countries with the bigger sticks, if we do those things. But if we don't do it, Tim, the cost will be very high, and I believe that, to fight crime, we have to move away from the traditional things, or rather take the traditional things that has worked, go with them, and incorporate other things into the crime fighting efforts that we are doing.
You think the fear that you attributing to our leaders, you think it is justified, or is it a case where our leaders are just not sufficiently bold and creative? They don't want to bite the bullet, they don't want to take chances, they just do not want to do things in a different way to get some kind of different result?
Well, I don't know if some of them are fearful, because politicians always like to ensure that they butter their bread, so to speak, in a way that they're going to win the next elections. And maybe that is something also that they are giving due consideration to. But I always say to myself that, it is, whether you win or lose an election, it is always good to do the right thing. And doing the right thing, sometimes, they tell you have to break eggs to make omelette, and you have to do those things. You have to step on toes, and there are some educators that might be resistant, because even in the earlier days, that there are some principals who were against even Rastafarians coming into schools, and that was a fight we had on our hands. So, we have to keep pushing the envelope. We have to ensure that we keep the, keep things going, and fear is not of the Almighty. We have to try to eliminate that fear that is within us as a people, and realize that we could achieve greatness. I'm sure Juju was fearful of going on that big stage and running in the Olympics, and look what came out of it, So fear is something that could be very crippling, and we must always do the right thing. No matter where we find ourselves in life, we must always do the right thing.
Why do you think, talking about doing the right thing, why do you think that there hasn't been this great exhibition or demonstration on the part of so-called right-thinking people in St. Lucia to clearly indicate that the youth on youth violence, particularly involving our young men, something must be done, if not to eradicate, but definitely to bring it under some level of control?
Sure.
Because I realized that in 2020, when there was this Black Lives Matter protest action or demonstration outside the island's parliament, and the suggestion was that it's because of the killing of George Floyd in May of 2020 in the United States. To me, that it appears there wasn't sufficient justification for it, for it to be replicated in St. Lucia. I always felt it was a political issue.
Okay.
It was politics on the cusp of a general election, so opportunities were taken to demonstrate that it's about time we have a black prime minister, because of the perception that the then Prime Minister Aron is white.
Yeah, I was involved in it, as you know. I was one of the frontliners, and to be honest with you, Tim, I never went on into that activity as any political thing, because, as you know, I run for the Green Party. So there was nothing. I don't know if others were on that sort of a mission, but I never was on that mission about black or white, because me being Rastafari, my example is His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie, and what he taught us is that, and even great leaders like Martin Luther King, all these men spoke about judging somebody according to the content of their character and not on the color of their skin. And even His Majesty spoke to that, until the color of a man's skin is of no more significance than the color of his eyes, because like they are white oppressors, they are black oppressors likewise, Tim. So I do not look at person's color of skin. I look at people policy. I look at, how somebody governs and so on, and how somebody carries themselves, and I look at those things instead of skin color. So on the Black Lives Matter thing, I was never on any political thing. I can only speak for myself.
Let's break it down. What was the justification for having this march?
The George Floyd and black on black, not the George Floyd situation, and the constant killing of black people by especially white policemen in America.
Yeah, but this does not happen in St. Lucia.
It doesn't happen here.
So I just get it. I just did not get the link or the association. We don't have a situation in St. Lucia where we have white police officers killing our black people, our black males. Yeah. We don't have that at all.
No, we don't have.
All right?
We don't have.
So I don't know why we had to emulate what was happening in the United States. What was the justification?
To me, I looked at it as just showing solidarity with black Americans.
But why not show solidarity and deliberately target and focus on what is happening in St. Lucia, the black on black violence?
Now that is why right now, as I'm speaking with you, I'm talking about the focus on that issue. Now at the time, maybe it was an oversight, maybe it was, like you say, maybe there were persons there who were on a political thing and they never looked at it that way. But
I would like to say it's not maybe.
Yeah.
I would like to say it was.
Okay, well, I was not exposed to it on that level.
But
so
I don't think, Mr. Alexander, you're that naive not to have realized what was happening.
Nah, man. I didn't get that width of nothing like that, because, I was there involved showing solidarity with black America, but I totally get your point that, hey, even here in St. Lucia, the black on black violence that has been going on, why not focus on that? I totally get that point, and that is why even now in the thrust that I'm moving forward there is dealing with that particular issue of black on black violence. And if we have to talk about having a protest or demonstration or so on for black on black violence, say every time you hear a youth man kill another youth man, if you have to do that, you could imagine the amount of protests and demonstration. Look, you just mentioned 71 murders. That would mean 71 rallies. So we have to.
But what we must understand is that we have not had not one rally. Not one focusing on black violence.
Yes. Now, I think that this is something that we need to change. I think the persons who were very enthusiastic about the George Floyd and putting on that protest at the time, and as you know, Brother ICAR was one of the persons in the forefront of that movement as well, and I was there with him as well, and I just stood up as showing solidarity with black America, and that was my main focus. And I didn't focus because even we invited the Prime Minister himself at the time, and he, through his I think it was his attaché Nancy Charles, I was in constant communication with her, finding out if he was coming and so on and so forth. So all that again did not I was not of the view that it was something against Alan Chasney for that protest, that march and so on, that demonstration. It never dawned on me that, because I was in touch with Nancy Charles trying to get Honorable Alan Chasney to be there, and he himself was saying, tell the police, give us permission, because remember we had the fracas, the police didn't want to give us permission, and he gave us, he spoke with the police officers, the CMO at the time too was saying no, it's COVID and all these things was going on, and Honorable Alan Chasney was in the background pushing for it to happen, as far as I'm aware. So I don't know if later he felt that it was against him, but he was very much pushing for the police to grant us permission and all these things. So I did not view it as any protest against Alan Chasney. That is my view,
The stigmatization of persons who have served time at the Bordelais Correctional Facility, ex-inmates, and how they are reintroduced into our communities and so on. Do you think also that is something that's worthy of addressing so that we could have a situation where after people have served their time and possibly rehabilitated, because we have to look at the deficiencies of the BCF, proper programs and initiatives of that nature to ensure that people are properly rehabilitated, so that we reduce on the rate of recidivism. What say to you to this particular issue?
Well, again, the training is very important. The rehabilitation is very important in the prison system. And it should not be a system whereby it's only based on punishment, you know, because people have families, because we go to the prison sometimes and speak with the inmates, you know, encourage them, let them know that's not the end of their lives, you know. They made a mistake and they have to pay their dues to society, but they will be coming back into society, and they have to make sure that they conduct themselves in a way to remain a free man or a free woman, you know, because, you know, like Ashanti sang in a song one time, you know, prison is from time to time human beings make mistakes and they're going to end up there, you know, so we must not believe as if, well, when somebody goes to jail, that's, you know, that's pretty much a death sentence. Depends on what you do, actually, you know. So we have to ensure that we train these people, rehabilitate them, so when they come back into society, that they could, you know, make a full integration back into society. So the BCF, they have to look at their programming, and we're always thankful that they're giving us the opportunity to come into the prisons and talk to the prisoners and so on, and let them know that, you know, their family waiting for them out there, you know, and make sure they don't repeat any kind of offense to end up back in there, you know.
With regard to the worsening crime problem in St. Lucia, generally speaking, how do you think we can tackle this? When, for example, you can have a situation where in broad daylight, somebody or two men traveling on a motorcycle can basically use a high-powered firearm, discharge it, resulting in one young male being killed and another being injured, and the possibility does exist that many other people could have been either injured or killed. How do we send a message out there that this needs to stop?
Man, I you know, in talking about that, you know, I probably need to look into the camera to talk to these people, you know, talk to these young men, you know. I mean, my brothers, you know. I mean, I don't know what that person could have done to you all for you all to move that kind of way and come, you know, on a motorcycle and open fire like that in a public place, my brothers. I don't know what that person had done to you all to deserve that. I know there's a lot of disrespect going out there among youth, among the you know, young men, you know, a lot of disrespect, a lot of cheating going on amongst, you know, that one take that one goods. I know there's a lot of these things going on out there, but my brothers, that's not the way. That's not the way. Your sister could have been there, your mother could have been there, who knows, one of your relatives could have been there and gotten hurt or probably even killed. My brothers, that's not the way to solve the problems. You know, if you have an issue with somebody, try to reach out to an elder in your community. You know, try to reach out to somebody you can trust and let them know the situation and see if somebody could intervene and have some kind of mediation. But that's really, really is out of place, that kind of behavior, my brothers. You know, and we all really need to check. You know, we cannot go down as a society. We cannot be behaving that kind of a way. They have children, you know, in the area. You know, my goodness, my brothers, you all really need to check your behavior. And whatever it is persons have done to you all that hurt you all so badly, and you all really need to, you know, get some healing. You know, some healing. You all need to get some healing of a situation you're going through. And there are others like you all out there that might be looking at that and want to do the same thing, or might be looking forward to hurting somebody in such a way. I appealing to you all, my brothers. I'm making an appeal to you all to find other ways to deal with the situation. Try to reach out to people you all can trust and have a conversation, have some sort of mediation, and see how we could bring this thing to a close. Revenge will only bring more revenge and more revenge and more bloodshed, my brothers. But that behavior there on the Derek Walcott Square, that was totally off, my brothers, you know. And check what is happening, man. You have children that could have been killed in that whole drive-by thing, man. Check yourself, my brothers. I appeal to you all. I appeal to you all, better angels, and your conscience. Have a conscience, my brothers, because, well, it's not good at all, my brothers.
We'll put a telephone number on screen so that you can call with your questions and comments as we have our discussion on this program, NewsMaker Live on DBS Television, and my guest, Mr. Aron Alexander, President of the Ayanola Council for the Advancement of Rastafari. What do you think that legislators should do? Because there is need for some kind of deterrence.
Yes.
And criminal elements are emboldened for one reason or the other. Maybe the fact that they know they are not likely to be caught, to be brought to justice and so on. But we have a call. Yeah. Good evening to you. This is NewsMaker Live. You're in the air.
Thank you very much, Mr. Poleon, and to Brother Aron.
Yes.
Good evening to you.
Let me just say very quickly, I know people may want to share. You see, this gentleman or these guys who pulled that trigger, they had died 1,000 deaths before they resorted to that behavior. There is no way you can end someone's life, even in the way it was done, and that something egregious would not have happened to you. Your humanity must have been stripped, whether it was philosophical, whether it was socially, whether it was through the education system, whether it was through the justice system, whether it was through the absent fathers, and all of the stuff you all have mentioned there, whether it may have been through the passage down through the DNA. These men, young men, would have died 1,000 deaths before they got to the point. Because for human beings to behave in that manner, they would have been forged in a certain fire that would have created that individual.
Sure.
And I'm sorry it's getting to that point, but it will take more than just conversations. I hear, let me go straight to the point. I applaud Aron, I applaud everyone who's coming out to speak. But Tim, I'm hearing older folks. I'm not hearing the youth. I'm not hearing the National Youth Council. I'm not hearing the National Students Council. I'm not hearing the young man on the block who is in the belly of the beast having a conversation with you and saying, this is where I hurt. And this is how I have been harmed. And this is what's going on in my head. This is the voice I need. Nobody's hearing me. Therefore, I'm speaking to the gun. If our people were as bad as some people are making it seem, why do you have young men dropping out of school and can still obtain high-powered weapons and can have motorcycles and can still coordinate an operation like that? It tells me that the education system that you alluded to is also one of the deaths that is a recurring decimal, and that the fact that a young person can come out of the system and still be able to execute at such a level, there is an education that they are missing. There is a part of their intelligence that is being ignored. And they say, I can do this, I can do things. If you only educate me or take me through the right processes in my life, empower me, see what more I can do if I direct that energy elsewhere. And I just wanted to throw that out there and implore everyone, especially the young people. Tim, I would love to see you with a former inmate, a young offender, somebody who has been there, who has walked the road, who has the scars, and they say, this is what is hurting me, and this is why I am doing this. To me, that will speak loud and resonate. Thank you so much for having your guest and for giving me the opportunity to share this. And I do hope that perhaps at some point I get an opportunity as well. I am a former Cargami ambassador team, and this is one of the things that we discussed. It's all over the region, and I would love to at some point be able to speak with somebody that we can bring in these young people, because they are fearful. And as I exit him, you ask about the system. So you have the system creating the frail youth, the system destroying the society, the system setting the justice system, the system educating the police, the system educating the news reporter, which is you, the very same system that is filled with flaws and ways of dehumanizing and removing the manhood of these young males is messing them up and coming back to punish them. These young men do not need to be punished. They need to be recalibrated. You know, you said prison has to be different. Of course, something has to happen, and it cannot happen in the way that it's happening. As long as we're going to do it the way we're doing it there, it will continue to get worse. Thank you so much for the time and great program.
Thank you so much, sir. What's you?
Tim, I have 13 crime fighting suggestions to whoever who's listening. Some of the police are already doing. Continued surprise roadblocks. Number 2, deliberate engagement with young men on the blocks. Grassroots organizations like RISE, Ubuntu Movement, ICAR can assist in that area. Number 3, those with problems or enemies, initiate mediations. Number 4, offer amnesty for turning in illegal guns. Number 5, more school pep talks and to reject violence and teaching our children to respect themselves and have more self-worth and so on.
Okay, as we go along, we'll number 6 and up to number 10. Good evening, NewsMaker Live, you're on the air.
Yes, want to make a contribution, please.
Go ahead, please, caller, you're on the air. Yes, good evening to you, caller. Go ahead, please.
Yes. Mr.
Yes.
Mr. Aron.
Yes, sir.
Do you hear me, Mr. Aron?
Caller, go ahead. We are hearing you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, good rapport, man. Government lightning and team there. I was surprised that team saying Black Lives Matter was all over the world. All over the world. You show team you are ignorant.
Okay, caller. Thank you so much for calling. Yeah, go ahead. We have another call. Good evening, NewsMaker Live, you're on the air.
Good evening, team, and good evening to you, Brother Aron.
Good evening to you, caller.
Brother Aron, I feel everything that you have said.
Thank you, my brother.
I believe one of my fault thinking is that St. Lucians, some of us know what to do, but we refuse to do it for all kind of other reasons and foolish reasons. But tonight, listening to you, I want to suggest one thing, Brother Aron, and I don't know if you're gonna take that one up. It may take a long time to materialize and to give us proper youth and good youth. But I think it is time now, while the time has passed, I think it is necessary that we have some form of youth movement in this country. Young, just like places like Guyana have the young people in an organized way.
Yeah, but caller, we have the National Youth Council in St. Lucia.
The National Youth Council is a talker. They talk. I'm saying to have a proper movement where we guide, we train, we discipline, and we bring up young people, and in the long run, those young people who have understood the rights and the youth in society, have people like Aron, young Aron, have some of the cadets come in. It has to be a movement where we take those young people out of where they are, put them in camp, whether it's boot camp or whatever it is. It may take a very long time before they change, but I think this is the way we need to go. We cannot be talking. The young people ridiculing some of us. You understand? Yes, Brother Aron could have gone this afternoon and help out and don't get himself cursed out. I myself do the same. I approach it in ways that I don't get myself into trouble. But many of us should have been doing that. But I think that we have got to bring our children, our young boys and girls who are Australia, how we call that? The place where they take them to Masan and those places, that is not going to help. I think we need to take them out, get them, organize them, educate them, and make them the kind of role models that we want. Leaving them out there and we talking will not make sense. I think we need some action, and I hope you will understand me.
Yeah, man.
And we can look at that as a nation to change our young people. Our young people will not, their mothers and fathers will not correct them. The police is only going to arrest them. What we need to do is to get this person-to-person involvement with them and change their lifestyle. This is a suggestion that I am putting out there. We got take it along, but I think it's going to work in the longer run. We will have better young people in the longer run. Let us get face to face. Like what you already did report there was very good. But that's only a tip of it. We need to get our youth out, and we have proper people there to guide and protect them and to make them better citizens. Have a very good show, Aron.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
You're well up there.
Thank you so much for calling.
Thank you.
But the only thing, based on what the caller is suggesting, that we need a more systematic approach. Maybe that's where the government comes in.
I find the National Youth Council, they too quiet him. I find they need to be more militant, you know. They need to wake up, man, and do something, because they have the power to do it, but they have not seized that power and move with that power and move the ministry and move the ministers too, you know.
Maybe they don't have the resources. I mean, the kind of subvention that is required to undertake programs of that nature.
No, they do take money for you to organize a protest with the kind of crime things that going on. The youth fund have to mobilize themselves and get together, make little contributions among themselves, do a little fundraiser. They can do stuff. You don't have to depend on government for everything. Do things to raise your funds and do things.
We have a call. Good evening to you. NewsMaker Live, you're on the air.
Hello, good evening, team.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening to you, caller.
Hi, Aron, how are you doing?
Good evening. I'm all right, my brother.
Okay. I have to applaud Aron for his effort. Civil society, the government, as it relates to dealing with crime in the country. But you know, the reality, team, the heart of the problem is the problem of the heart. And as long as man's heart, as long as there isn't a transformation in man's heart, that problem will persist.
But how do you
the only
transform
person
it?
that can do that, the only person that can do that is God.
Well, God should be at the helm of the government in terms of our leadership. Let's have a theocracy instead of having
a church state.
Yeah, have a church state. Have a theocracy.
Have a theocracy, a church state.
And you see exactly. You just enforcing my point, because a while ago in Aron's appeal, he made reference to the church, and that's the problem we have, you know. When certain recommendations come from church leaders and the church, they are ridiculed, they are marginalized, and they are considered, you know, they are called all sorts of names. So that's the problem. But the reality is, and I understand your argument, and if our leaders were godly leaders, you'd have seen the results in our society. It would have helped curb crime, because if their worldview was a biblical worldview, a lot of policies, government policies, would have helped to curb and eradicate crime to a certain level. But even the very policies, laws that are enacted are not biblical. And so for that reason, you find our society is in that mess. Man has no regards for his brother. Man has no regards for man. Man does not realize that man was made in the image of God. I mean, just that one thought, just that one reality. If you consider a life, if you consider a man, and you consider his creator, his maker, you will value that life, you will value that individual, and there will be no space in your heart to take a gun or a knife or a stone or whatever weapon it is and murder that individual. But I go back to my initial point. The heart of the problem is the problem of the heart. Government has its place. God ordained government. The government, the politicians have to understand they have a responsibility first to God, and then to man. But if you ignore the very person that is responsible for putting you in power, so to speak, because every elected member of government is God's intervention, is God's providence, and politicians don't realize that the first course of action, that the responsibility is to God and not to man. And that is the problem. And I'm not saying that Christians should be politicians. I'm not saying that, because that's not what St. Lucia wants. That's not what the world wants. But I am saying, at least, if man individually take responsibility for himself and his life and his action, and trust God, and call upon God, and give God his rightful place on the throne of the heart, then that will assist in the current problem. And until that happens, I applaud ICAR, I applaud the government, I applaud civil society, I applaud all these various organizations and groups, that's making contributions significantly to try and curb crime. But I am saying the heart of the problem is the problem of the heart. And unless there is a transformation in man's heart, there cannot be a transformation in man's thinking. Man will continue to think diabolically till God touches his heart. Remove that heart of stone and give him a heart of flesh. And that self is a miracle. That is a life of faith. That is the solution to the problem. Good night. I don't know if you have any questions for me.
Thank you so much, Colin. I don't know if I agree with him entirely, because for eons now, for generations, men, you have a section of the society, any society, that will be diabolical, that will be wicked, that will be deviant, that will not go according to accepted principles and standards in any society.
Tim, I put it simply by saying prayers is not enough.
But you need to maintain law and order in any society.
That's
Otherwise, if you fail to do that, it becomes chaotic.
And with us as Rastafari, we say you must work and pray. So you must do the work. You must put in the time to put systems in place, put things in place. You can't just be praying for things to fall out of the sky. You have to have the practicality, the training, and the know-how to put things in place likewise.
Another call. Good evening. NewsMaker live on the air.
Hello, good evening, Tim.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening to you.
Alexander.
Good evening.
Very good program. Let me tell you, Mr. Alexander, I agree with a lot of what you say. I agree with the gentleman who spoke a while ago. However, Mr. Alexander and Tim, I want you all to realize I'm living very close to a school and I'm observing a lot of things. It's not only the males that are giving the the young women now are coming treacherous. They're getting just like the males and they're getting worse than the males. So we also have to take them into consideration. The women too, not only the young men, but the women too, the young girls too. And one of the things that I think is this. Sometimes when governments are in power, certain persons will say, I will help, I will do this, I will do that, I will try to assist them. So once the government has gone out of power, they just give up. It's like they show as if they're not interested anymore because that was not their motive. It is what is the person's motives when you see they go out and they tell you they're going to do certain things. It's not for, sometimes it's not for the country, sometimes it's for their personal gain. And this is what we have to run away from. Persons who go out there to speak to those children should be persons who go out for the furtherance of our country and the morals in our country. Tim, I am seeing something happening, and what I feel too that government what they can do is persons coming in to speak to those children after they have left high school, they should be in a program. They should be enlisted in a program, either to assist others. A lot of these children are not put into social programs where they assist others. They learn compassion. They learn how to share. They learn how to take care of. And agriculture can pull in. The health system can pull in. Look, in the health system, we're complaining every day. They don't have this, they don't have that. Use the young people. The young people are there. Use them. Use them in different programs. And also, I keep on talking about having programs for anger management. Anger management in the schools. And it's just falling on deaf ears. Another thing, Timothy, when we say that the children are this and the children are that, what about the parents? Are they any better? Are the homes better? The homes these children are in, is it better? Are the parents showing a good example to those children? In many cases, no. I have noticed parents going to the school And when you hear them speak, you wonder what is going on. Timothy, this is a serious thing going on here, and unless government take it with the church and with other social organizations, not for motive of personal motive, but motive for the country, we just spitting top in mud. Have a good evening, gentlemen.
Yes.
Thank you so much for calling.
Tim, I want to share a couple more of the points I have there. Yeah, I want to say number 6, offer rewards for information which leads to arrests and convictions. Number 7, initiate a regional witness protection program through the RSS. Number 8, increase funding to community youth sports and social clubs. Number 9, implement highway patrols, especially in the advent of so many accidents. Tim, have some highway patrol on the highway leading up to Grosile and the Bexon highway where you have all these accidents happening. They have some form of highway patrol that will deter drivers that driving careless and reckless. I think if we have so many motorbikes, the Prime Minister just give them so much equipment. The police need to make better use of those things and have those motorbikes on highway patrol. Nobody knows where they are stationed, but the drivers know that there's highway patrol. They'll behave themselves, Tim. So all these things can help with the situation we're going through.
We'll go there in just a moment. Good evening to you, NewsMaker Live. You're on the air.
Good evening, Tim, and your guest.
Good evening to you, caller.
Thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome, sir.
Tim, I've been listening. I'm not on the island, but I've been listening, and I've heard the gentleman talk about the great people from before, like Martin Luther King and Garvey and all these people, which were people of old and had their time and did what they did, which was good. But Tim, we have to go further back than those guys, you know. We had the wisdom of Solomon. We have books with us today that showed us that when the righteous is in power, the people rejoice. And when the wicked is in power, the people mourn. So I'm saying all this to say, Tim, that we have to go way back and see what worked then. Because it can still work today. It's just that we moved away from it. You know, in my growing up, I know that I saw people hang. They killed somebody, and they had to be dealt with. And the other people had respect to that. And the crime level was not like that. And I'm saying this again to say that these things from way of old, before Garvey and before all of these people, we have the books that talk about people way before these people. And we know that when the righteous was in power, the people rejoiced. And when the wicked was in power, the people mourned. We have writings that say that what was taught back then, we should have teach them to our children, that they in turn would teach them to their children and to their children, and that the nations would grow up having a fear of God first of all, and a fear of doing wrong. But we don't have that today. I am not hard for either side of the government, but when the Prime Minister, Mr. Shastny, got into power, he made a prayer. It was a long prayer in the nation. He didn't just address it, he prayed. But people didn't look at that. People are running away from prayer. We're taking it out of schools. Look at what's happening to America. One guy said, if you want to know where we're going, look at our past, and you will see where we're going. So it's okay to talk about these men of old. They were good men. They stood for the righteousness of the nations back then, but it goes even beyond that. It goes beyond that. We need to get back to the scripture. That's what we need to get to, you know. And I know some people will not want to go there, but that's what worked. We cannot deny it. That is what worked. One more phrase. They hated him without a cause. Why? Because what he did good. He fought against the violence, the injustice. The woman that committed adultery. These are the things that we were supposed to instill into our children, that they then would in turn teach them to their children, and it would go on and on and on. And the nations that would be today would be nations that have that in them. But we don't have that today because we have gone away from all that. We're going for all other things in slavery and all the other ideologies and ideas. But we're not looking at what works. We need to get back to the punishment for how can you just take a man's life? How can you just take a man's life for God's sake and you walking around alive? It it sounds like cruelty when we say about it now, but what about the person who's dead? Didn't they have a right to live? Wouldn't they have a right to be brought to justice for the crime they committed against the guy who killed him? These are the things that the courts need. All that has to go back. Look, they want you to put your hand on the Bible when you go to court to swear. But they're not interested in what's in the Bible. Or in the scriptures, I should say, because the word Bible is not in the Bible. The word scripture is in the Bible. The word Bible is given by man. But we have scriptures that's supposed to govern nations, govern people. You know, but people believe that man just write that, and then man would write, it is not good for a man to touch a woman. Which man would write that against himself? That's inspired writings that's supposed to govern us today, but we run away from it. We have some talk show hosts that say, I don't know the Bible, so I ain't going there. But you're going to have to face it. That is what worked. That is what worked, and that's what we need to get back to. The parents of these people who are harboring these people, they were not taught that. If they knew that, they would be able to see down the road and ask themselves, how does this affect me down the road? How will this affect my family if I don't straighten my kid out now? Thank you, Tim. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you so much. All the best to you, caller. We have another call. Good evening. NewsMaker Live, you're on the air.
Hello, yes.
Good evening to you, caller.
Yes, I hear somebody's talking, so waiting for my turn.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, but I'm watching it on TV and the man is still talking, so...
Yeah, turn down the volume of your television set. We have always said that. Turn down the volume of the television set.
Okay, I'm doing that.
And then you will go ahead with your contribution, caller.
Okay, I'm doing that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
My contribution is I find it strange even as I'm brought that up. Music has a big part to play with it.
What's that?
Music has a big part to play for our country is going right now. Because there's nothing conscious on an early morning where it be on the radio and people's car passing, you know, people play a kind of absurd music, you know. Am I being heard by Timothy and thing? Or
we are hearing you, caller. We are hearing you.
Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
Good evening.
Yes, good evening, brother. Go ahead.
Like I was saying, yes, good evening again.
Caller is being distracted by his television.
Yeah, because I'm not hearing myself. I'm actually very low and I'm saying like I'm hearing me.
Just go ahead with your contribution. We are listening to you, caller.
Okay. Okay. I was telling you. Hello?
Yes, speak, my man. Speak, my brother. We hearing you. Talk about the music. You talk about the music. Go ahead.
Yes, yeah, the music. Okay? We've been playing too much absurd music in this country. And I think if you check it out, if we only play jazz for the whole year, we'll get a lot of jazz fans. You know, if we play a lot of religious music every day, that may change the hearts of people. When you tell me early in the morning, people playing some kind of absurd tunes, and some guys have it in their cars, early 7 o'clock in the morning, they pack by a school to buy garbage around or buy from a tuck shop selling some food, all kind of literally absurd. And you know what I'm talking about. Aron knows it too. I mean, I was up in the 70s, 80s, and then kind of time there, and we didn't have that kind of music going to school. And now anything goes, and they have children now don't know about Bunny Wheeler, they don't know about Peter Tosh, they don't know about Bob Marley music, but they know about Skilly Bang and all these kind of people are pushing a kind of
corruption.
That's my view to it, and I listen on the TV, but music has a big part to play in it.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think it depends on your mentality, your mindset, your upbringing, and your ability to be swayed in one way or the other. That's
and to realize that the artists who sing in this music, that don't necessarily mean that's how they live.
And to see that's entertainment.
Exactly. You know, we have to be able to draw the line, you know.
You have a call. Good evening to you. NewsMaker Live, on the air.
Yeah, good night.
Good evening to you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Good night. Aron.
Yes.
What I have to say, right? Unless you have to put restore confidence back in the country, it will this time will not stop. No matter what people tell you, restore confidence will be the best thing to happen.
in the country. Mr. Pierre don't want to say it, tell you what you have to say.
Okay, thank you so much. What's it to this?
Well, I need to say that we need more police community policing, outreach programs to cultivate greater community trust in the police. I want to say that we need to use a portion of the health and security tax that the government has implemented and seek other financial interventions to complement that, so we could provide a monthly stipend for youth at risk ages 18 to 25 who are actively seeking employment. If we give these youth a stipend, that could sway them away from crime as well. That could be used as a deterrent. So we can use some of those funds to do that. Implement better parenting programs. 13, implement programs to combat the legacy of the post-traumatic slave syndrome, which we have already spoken about. We saw in times gone by all the uproar that was in Vieux-Fort with all the murders and so on, and now Vieux-Fort is very quiet. And I know that is due in part to the efforts of organizations like RISE and Ubuntu Movement. So we need to get those interventions, continue those interventions. That was great interventions, and we need to implement that in other parts of the island as well. So that's my 14-point plan in terms of suggestions for crime fighting team.
Thank you so much. We'll take a final call. Good evening to you, NewsMaker Live. You're on the air.
Good evening.
Good evening to you, caller.
Good evening.
Yes, so Mr. Alexander, you said about the post-traumatic slave syndrome. What do you call it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Post-traumatic slave syndrome. So I'm wondering why it did not exist in your generation. To me, with the advent of drugs and guns, that's why we have all these killings, because when you use a gun on somebody, it's almost a point of no return. So when you shoot them, most times it's fatal. So I think that is why, because of the drugs and the crime, that is why we find that we have so many killings nowadays. Because in the generation of our generation, the generations before, we didn't have all those murders in St. Lucia. I remember in 1984, we probably had one murder a year or two murders a year. So why so many murders now? I don't think it's anything to do with slavery. And I think the people really cannot take the pace of the developing world, of what they've seen on the TV of the U.S. And also we have a lot of drugs in schools now, because the drugs go to the children in the schools. So the children are angry at the school, and they have low tolerance to anything, and then they fight with each other because some of them are very high. So I don't think it's anything to do with slavery. I think it's tolerance and some other things Timothy said as well, like the parenting and the young parents and the fathers, the absent fathers, and all these things have a lot to do with what's happening, and the poverty as well. But I don't believe that the post-traumatic slave syndrome is anything, because it would have affected generations and generations, not just this generation. Okay,
ma'am. Thank you so much for calling.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I want to say to the caller, it affects us in different ways, caller. Violence is one of the ways that it affects us, but it affects us in different ways, because when we grew up in our time, like you say, you grew up in the 70s, you grew up in the 80s, it was not so acute, we did not have those high murder rates, but there were other things. There were fathers abandoning their families, and they had a lot of single parent household. A lot of children were in poverty, and these children now grew up, and they now have children at a very young age, and it's a cycle that continues. So it has its place. It's not one thing. Like I said earlier, it's not just about post-traumatic slave syndrome, the poverty and all these things. Even when you look at poverty, how did we end up in poverty? When we look at the way that we started off as a country after independence, we were never given any reparations to say that we were paid a certain amount of money after we were exploited for hundreds of years by the British. When they granted us independence, we never received a purse full of money or any kind of assistance to get our economy going and so on. So we started off at zero. So all these things cause us to be even in poverty today. When you look at the high level of debt, when we became independent, all the developments that were already in the country, the British actually passed that on to us as debt, when it's supposed to be, we're supposed to start with a clean slate. So we start off our economy in debt, and it's just a marvelous thing to see how some of our prime ministers and ministers of finance have been able to manage the country, that we're not in utter poverty, today, but we started off on a wrong foot. So the poverty we see today is a direct result of the poverty of coming out of the British Empire and all the domination and all the exploitation of the British for over 100 years or so. And we never paid a cent for that, not a dime. So the poverty we see today is a direct result of all those things. And even now, with the reparations that Caribbean countries are calling for, one of the main things that they're asking for is debt cancellation. Remove the Caribbean countries out of debt. Do not pass your debt on to us. You all owed us. You all did some developments, and when you all grant us independence, you all say, okay, the country is already saddled with debt right there from independence. So we started off on a wrong foot first to begin with. So all this poverty you see is a direct result coming out of slavery, coming out of colonialism. We saddled with all this debt, and we're in all this utter poverty and so much debt in the country right now.
Mr. Aron Alexander, President of ICAR, thank you so much for being my guest on this evening's NewsMaker Live.
You're most welcome, my brother.
And to you, as always, thank you so much for watching and listening. If it's Wednesday, it's NewsMaker Live. Time now for the clip that peaked.
Whatever you give a woman, she'll receive it, multiply it, give it back to you. Whatever you give a woman, are you listening, brothers? She'll never give you back what you gave her. She'll multiply it first. She's designed that way. If you give a woman a sperm, you'll never get a sperm back. She'll multiply it, give you a baby. If you give her a house, she'll multiply it, give you a home. If you give her groceries, she'll give you a meal. If you give her frustration, she'll multiply it. So brothers, if you don't like what you are getting, change what you're giving.
That's a very good evening. My name is Timothy Poleon saying good night and see you next time.
I, Philip Joseph here, I would like to be judged as being the Prime Minister, not being judged as being part of a government.
We came into government that we had a manifesto and a vision and mission that had been approved by my party, by the highest body.
Basel 11 has not been in existence. 50 was...
Giant getting bazooka. Spraying big on to knock out mosquitoes.
I have never had a joint account with anybody in my life. Not my ex-wife, not my children, nobody. And I will refer that to the Privileges Committee.
What about the culture of people getting into office and not being effective?
What people become Prime Minister of Lucia have been the most ready.
Let's do it this Wednesday, because if it's Wednesday, it's NewsMaker Live.